Welcome to another exciting edition of Near Mint Comic Radio, your local comic shop, shrunk down, gamma irradiated, sworn to protect a world that fears and hates it, and aired live-ish every week only on the Non-Productive Network, the only place that would have us. I'm your host, Frank, joined in studio as often by Pete, James, and John Trumbull, writer for Back Issue Magazine from Two Moros Publishing. And we are covering Crisis on Infinite Earths. No, not the CW one. Not really. We're reading the original 1985 Crisis. Some of us for the very first time. Others read it in utero, apparently. I'm not sure how that works. Best not to think too much about that, folks. Oh, that's very disturbing. But yes, we're going to be reading Crisis Issue 2. It's a 12-issue miniseries. Many of us are reading it for the first time. Go back and listen to the first episode if you happen to have missed it. This one will probably be a little briefer unless we go on for a very long time about the mammoths, which I am prepared to do.
Oh, boy.
So this book starts off with just prehistoric Earth and mammoths attacking the Bear Clan. Anthro is the opposite of Commandy.
More or less.
He is the first boy.
He's a cave boy. Yeah.
Yes.
Anthro is the first boy. Commandy is the last boy on
There
Earth.
you go. So if there are ever bookends fashioned, if anybody has like some sort of like busts of those two characters, I will not buy them. He also
I am
has
the
amazing
Anthro
hair.
and the Commandy.
That's
Doing the crossover.
It's like the Alpha and the Omega.
Exactly.
Yes, that's the
you
one.
got the reference.
So, it's a very odd start. Another very odd start. We kind of started semi in Gorilla City in the recruitment phase from last book, and here we're in the past with Anthro and a little slice of comedy life. But this does introduce a very interesting thing that I think may carry us into the rest of Crisis, which is time collapsing in some way.
Yeah. Because the antimatter stuff is hitting us in the past, the present, and the future all at once.
Because it's angry.
Somehow.
Right.
It's because it's angry.
Oh, is that,
Yeah, because
It's
it is a
emotional
crisis of
antimatter.
emotion. Yes, as we covered in last episode, it's a crisis of emotion.
If it was cold logic antimatter, it would just be hitting one time at a time.
efficiently.
Right.
Yeah.
So this is where we, I think, where we see the Legion of Superheroes, Earth in the 30th century pop up.
Yep.
And so, what are James? You don't know anything about the Legion of Superheroes.
Absolutely not. No.
It's just weird because they do make appearance in some DC animated universe things.
They seem
Superman.
familiar, but like I didn't know them specifically. They definitely seemed more familiar than some of the characters we met in the last book.
So here's one of the crazy things. Of course, we are reading this because the CW is doing Crisis, and I figured it's a nice tie-in. It's been almost 35 years since this book came out, and one cool thing is that some of these characters have begun appearing in these series.
Well, they mentioned Brainiac 5, who I think's in Supergirl.
Yes.
Yeah, I think he's most notable, and then a few other of the broader strokes, the concepts like Legion of Superheroes in the 30th century are all elements. So, kudos to DC for still playing with these characters after all these years, but...
Well, you got to keep those trademarks viable.
Sure. But
That's a big part of it.
anybody, I know, Pete, you were not a Legion reader at the time
No,
or
sir.
now. Were you a Legion leader, John?
A region leader?
A Legion reader?
I was definitely a leader of the region.
Okay, talk about that then.
I've gone through like fits and starts with the Legion of Superheroes. As I would like read them for a little bit, and then I would be like, okay, I've got my fill, and then I'd leave them alone for like 5 years, and then I'd come back to them later on.
Yeah.
And the Legion are interesting because they've been rebooted so many times, like 3 or 4 times at this point. So we really don't know what their history is. And the Legion is a book that took a big hit with the Crisis because a lot of their history went away.
And I feel like that the Legion is a book that you can read in pieces, like where it's almost like the comic book that exists within the universe. Because even our main heroes think of the Legion as, those other heroes that are out there disjointed so far in the future that it means nothing to us.
Right. Well, I mean, because they're so far in the future, they are kind of removed from the rest of the DC universe. But it's a very simple, elegant concept where it's just teenagers, superpowered teenagers from the future.
Yeah.
I think it might be helpful. My context for the first time I was kind of introduced to the Legion was in a issue of Marvel's What the comic.
Really?
Where they were doing a parody of the teams from the future. Mm-hmm. The Guardians of the Galaxy at the time was exclusively it was Marvel's version of the Legion, really.
Right.
And the joke was that the Legion kept popping into this story, and every time they would completely reintroduce the Legion with all new members.
Oh, wow.
Or a couple carryovers who now looked completely different.
That was in Spider-Boy team-up. The amalgam thing
they did do that in that also.
Yeah.
But
they also did in
what the first.
Okay, interesting.
That's catty and beautiful.
You got a good point though. I think the Spider-Boy one was
they did that.
It was more elegant the way they did.
Yeah, he met the Legion and they were completely revamped each time they met him, and he was meeting them like 3 or 4 times. In
the Legion of Galactic Guardians.
Yes,
honestly, that's smart. I mean, there's a butterfly effect that should be affecting them every time. It's interesting. It's kind of it's a nice way to introduce somebody who they haven't had a lot of real estate yet in the Crisis books, and apparently they're going to have a lot more. But the real meat of this story for me comes in some amazing panels that involve the Joker coming and fighting, killing somebody, adding another person to the long list.
It's not the 30th century space guards who are ready to shoot and kill the mammoths when one Legionnaire pops up and they're like, screw it, we're going to go get a sandwich.
It's more your jurisdiction. No, it's Joker showing up, killing a descendant of Miles Standish, weird flex, and fighting Batman with a glue gun.
This is my hook, right?
Yeah.
It's hard to, for a bunch of these characters that I don't have a lot of connection to in the first issue, but here when Flash comes out of like his time vortex and he's like melting, and the Joker's kind of terrified and says like, tell him to go away. He can't fight here.
He has no jurisdiction here.
Right?
He's in Central City. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Batman wants to know what's going on, and he's talking about how the world is dying. It really is awesome and terrifying.
I get I'm just wondering if Marv wrote this originally with the Riddler in mind, and then somebody in editorial said, "Could you make that the Joker?"
Why is that?
He's gonna, because the riddles and his obsession with the clues that he left.
A lot of Batman villains do clues, though.
Yeah, there was a thin line at this point.
Motif.
The silent movie thing is much more of a Joker thing. Even though there was an episode of the Adam West Show where Frank Gorshin is after silent movies. He's doing crimes based on silent movies, but that was based on a Joker comic book story. They just adapted it for Frank Gorshin.
We get some great art early on in this, some great George Perez Joker faces all over the place, including a panicked Joker. It looks very much like a panicked Joker towards the end, facing off against a decrepit and wasting away Barry. Like
love the eyes, the close-up of the eyes.
He's looking very skeletal.
Yeah.
It's there's a lot of horror going on in this first page, and an immediate hook because you're going on name brand characters that like unquestionable. You know who these people are. You're invested. When Joker's afraid, you know it's something weird.
Right.
And Batman's freaked out by the end because he sees the Flash basically disintegrate before his eyes, and he literally says, "Dear God, what is happening?"
So a little context at this point, and I'm not sure how familiar we are. Batman seems to react as if Flash shouldn't be here, not just because he appears out of nowhere, but also because he is presumed dead, I think is what they said. They thought he was dead.
He disappeared. He's like missing in action, basically.
They say Iris, he thinks late wife, so he thinks Iris is dead, and then and Flash disappeared, I believe. If it's not in this scene, it's later on when he talks to Superman. He says after the trial. This is in context. Flash just had a trial for killing his evil counterpart, Reverse Flash, who he has to kill to sort of save the future, to save his people.
Right.
And he's been living in the future with Iris happily. I think right before this, I don't think anything else.
The Flash's book had just been canceled at this point.
Really?
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
So issue 350 was the last of it because his sales were down, and the writer on that book, Cary Bates, he had just started the storyline with the Flash killing the Reverse Flash and having a trial, and he got the word, and it was like, oh, okay, the book is coming to an end. I can either wrap up the storyline I'm doing and then do some other stories before the end, or I can just extend this storyline, this trial storyline, And that
Make it kind of the
storyline,
final story.
yeah, and that storyline went on for I think literally 2 years.
Wow.
Which for
Was it good?
For that time
early,
period,
it
yeah.
started out good, but it went on for a really long time, and I'm sure it did not help the sales.
Yeah.
Because
Although
you
I-
have the world's fastest man in the world's slowest storyline. You did not have storylines go on for 2 years in the 1980s.
I do respect the idea of saying, well, this is a good place to end rather than mid
Right.
drama. But this is the first time readers have got to see Flash in a while, and he is not looking good.
Nope.
We get another great splash page for the title, Time and Time Again. And here
By
we
the
get
way, before we've got that panel with Batman, Dear God, What is Happening?
Yeah.
And then the next panel, did anybody else read that like it was from the Paul Lynde Halloween special?
what the DC Comics.
DC Comics proudly presents.
I definitely read.
No.
I don't know.
Yeah, that Poland.
No, I took it as like they're going for like a cinematic widescreen
Cinematic
sort of
was
thing.
the word I was going to use.
Yeah.
This is definitely like at this point they are aware they're attempting a prestige thing, and
Like that is the moment when the John Williams music would kick in, the bum ba bum bum ba 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 ba. You know, like
although Superman does not appear
Well-
until like midway through the splash page.
I definitely felt more of that sort of like corny, oh, save them sort of stuff from the first issue when we're like with the Super League of Villains or whatever. But not here. Here it seems high stakes.
Yeah. So we get a splash page reintroducing all our characters, although still with Fire God, it's Firestorm and
People I don't
Killer
know.
Frost or not. It's very awkward. And of course, Dr. Polaris is one of the few people who gets to speak, and he's mouthing off at the monitor, just angry because he wasn't given a good access to guns before.
I gotta say though, I've always loved Dr. Polaris. I think just because I like his costume a lot. He's got those cool tuning fork earpieces.
He stole Galactus's helmet.
and Magneto's power set. Yeah.
He's got an awesome Gil Kane costume. I love Dr. Polaris.
Very good.
No accounting for taste. No, I'm kidding.
And we're just reestablishing all the stakes of the situation. You know, the earthquakes, the volcanoes, and everything else going on.
And we know that the Monitor is now evil because his eyes are blacked out.
Maybe, or it's just a coloration issue.
Yeah, no, I think that's just more an artifact of him having that massive Martian Manhunter type brow.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's just shades his eyes.
So this is what I get. We talked about our frustrations, some of our frustrations with this book last episode, and it carries over in the front for me in this issue. Great dynamic, personal story with Batman, Joker, Flash. Great. But then immediately cutting to heroes bickering in an office with the person who invited them there. Very anticlimactic, but I get why it's there. I just feel like it goes on overly long. Everyone is explaining how they've got their doubts, but maybe they don't have their doubts. This happens a lot in this period of comic stories. We saw the same thing happen in Infinity Gauntlet, where there was a lot of characters reacting to how they should be reacting to things and who's in the room with them. Like, oh, that's a character I've never seen before. I'm like, settle down. We get it. Just behave like a person in the scenario.
I don't actually have a problem with that Minotaur, but
I mean, but that was just, like you said, the era of comics. There was a lot more sort of exposition because not everything was collected in a trade. Hardly anything was collected in a trade in this era. So you had to bring all the new readers up to speed for people who were just coming in on the second issue.
Right.
So-
And
yeah, you had if somebody was buying the second issue at this time and didn't have the first issue, there was very little chance they were going to be able to get the first issue.
yeah, at this point, they were maybe just starting comic book stores that were just focusing on comic book stores, on carrying comics. I will also say, like, the audience, let's be honest, we're kids at this point. We're primarily focusing on...
Skewed younger, definitely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
on younger readers. So we get a little bit of a background on whether or not we should believe in the Monitor, and I think more importantly is we're building up some of the drama between Harbinger and the Monitor, and how she is in fact infected and is going to betray him.
Right. By this point, I believe she's absorbed all the other duplicates into herself. So now her primary self is compromised.
Yeah.
So, and she's like, I'm going to have to kill you someday.
So as somebody who is like aware of the broad strokes of this, I know what's happening, even though I have no idea what's happening at this point. I don't know how much we want to talk about
I
that.
know what's happening, even though I have no idea what's happening.
Exactly.
That
could
sums
be-
it up so
That
beautifully.
could be on my tombstone.
Yeah.
But the thing is, like, I don't want to talk too much about that. But I feel like a lot of the reveals that happen, this book is so iconic that if you're reading along with us for the first time, when they do get revealed, I think we're gonna just be like, yeah, all right,
Yeah,
all right.
I knew
That's why that's the name of the character that I'm more familiar with.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. We could cut right into Green Lantern Corps. The first time we talk about Oa. Apparently, the Guardians are to blame for all of this. Okay.
Yeah.
By the way, they're the stupidest characters in the world, I think.
What? You don't like the
All
Guardians?
right, go for it. Dig in.
Okay, so you've got the super secret planet Oa.
Yeah.
Where do you hide your super secret planet? Dead center in the middle of the universe. It's like that. Nobody's ever going to look there.
Okay, go on. Yes. What other stupid things do they do?
That's as stupid as you need to be.
Batteries. Come on, who needs them?
It was the Silver Age. They just had to do this elegantly simple science fiction for kids.
And how close do they have to keep it to the lensman is what I want to know. Deep cut. Sorry.
Yeah.
It's not-
Julie Schwartz, the editor of the Silver Age stuff, he was a big science fiction buff, and the Lensman stuff was very conscious.
So I mean, at this point we're still just establishing like there are stakes here. It connects to everything, which I appreciate.
Yeah. But these, at least these are stakes I recognize.
Okay.
I know the
Fair enough.
Guardians.
Right.
I know.
Fair enough.
I know, Superman. I know Batman. You know what
You've
I mean?
heard of the
Like,
Legion.
I've heard of the Legion. Exactly. Like book 2 is the stuff I almost wish we started with, and then you could have given me book 1 with a bunch of weird characters, and then
So,
because I'd already
not
been
to
invested.
Secret Wars where they just winked at them all together immediately.
So you didn't want to start the story with the talking gorilla. Interesting. Interesting.
I just
Gorilla
don't
leader.
fit the DC mold.
I will actually say that this first thing with introducing the Guardians in Oa, I do appreciate a lot having read 52 and Crisis on Infinite Earths and Infinite Crisis, and I'm sorry, not Crisis on Infinite Earths. This is Crisis on, but Infinite Crisis, and a lot of DC's newer stuff that actually all tied back into this. It really does. It makes it all give you a better appreciation for how elegantly everything was tied together.
And everybody who respects it afterwards, how much
Yes.
respect this has afterwards, because this is one page in the book.
Yeah.
Right. And eventually it's the launching point of so much else.
And maybe we should also say that we had Crisis crossovers throughout DC's line at the time. So this page, this sequence that we see with the Guardians of the Universe, this was repeated in the Green Lantern comic. And the writer at the time, Steve Englehart, he did a long storyline that just tied in with Crisis on Infinite Earths, and he played off of this really, really well.
Right. All right, so we get into the meat of what what is it? What's a derogatory term for the casuals? The casuals will care about. It's Daily Planet, Superman, and Batman. You know who these people are, don't you?
I'm a casual.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah, and they, of course, Batman recaps to Superman that there are problems happening with Flash, and Superman maybe kind of unsure of himself says, I'm sure we can handle this, the two of us. I think setting up maybe some dark foreshadowing about not handling
We've never
this.
really needed to combine forces with more than two of us.
Yes, and that's where we run into the Pariah. Again, our lavender hair emo kid.
Lavender hair,
Who
black
finally
Adam.
identifies
Adam.
himself.
Yes, this is where
But
we
I gotta
first
say,
get
I do love Pariah's costume. I love the
Oh, it's neat.
the lime green and then the dark green cape. I think he's a very striking looking character.
yeah, it's interesting seeing him miserable so much later on when coming across Psycho Pirate, seeing him when he's happy is very disturbing.
Yeah,
No, don't make
miserable is Pariah's default state.
Right. So we get a little bit more of Kamandi here, and that's
Kamandi.
cool. Kamandi.
Commandy.
You know what?
He was found in a bunker. It was Command D. So that's the pronunciation.
Oh, okay. Didn't know that.
Command D.
That doesn't help. I don't
Command
wanna-
D was in the story earlier?
Was he? No.
No,
it was
we-
No,
after.
we just
we've just
talked
been
about
talking
him.
about him.
We've
Okay.
just been talking
Yeah,
about
me
Commandy.
confused,
Because
like
why
I
wouldn't
missed
you talk
Commandy.
about Commandy?
Right.
Commandy's
you
name is the Secret of Nim.
If you have an opportunity to talk about Commandy, the last boy on Earth, you take that opportunity.
So,
Secret of Nim sliding that in. Don't do that.
I'm just.
That was another
confused.
deep
Let's
cut.
keep going.
All right.
So far, we've had the Lensman and the Secret of Nim.
Yeah. Take a drink.
If someone's playing a geek bingo, they are doing very well right now.
Yeah, so we do have a half-buried Planet of the Apes statue, which is actually called the Statue of Liberty, Frank. You could probably use that. A little kid Frank
No,
was
no.
like, oh, Planet of the Apes statue. Oh,
Actually, it's called Liberty Enlightening the World.
God.
But
All right. So, yes, this is... It's an interesting moment because in this... I'm just going to muscle through. That's an interesting moment because Commandy does run into Superman, recognizes him, which is kind of weird. And Superman's like, how do you... Well, he probably met my other me.
We should back up a little bit though, because there's this big thing in Commandy's future era. It's this giant tuning fork thing.
Yes.
Right.
That is
Yeah,
not
let's talk
supposed to
about
be
that.
there.
Oh,
That has just suddenly appeared.
It looks a little bit like Galactus's index finger.
Tower?
Yeah.
Let's say
No
tower.
guts, no glory.
All right. So yeah, that's the thing. It looks like it's yeah. So yeah, he's climbing it because you do what you got to do.
Yeah.
And he runs into all the other heroes. Has a little bit of levity and misunderstanding who's a gorilla and what kind of
Right.
talking gorilla this talking gorilla is, and Superman from different times.
Commandy is friends with a lot of talking animals.
Right.
Yeah.
So Sullivar doesn't really weird him out that much.
But his eyes, they're so warm.
Yeah.
Not cold and dead from playing hours and hours of Fortnite.
Yeah. All right.
And they're fighting the shadows, which are no
Right.
longer a part of the Monitor.
Well, we have never established what they are.
We don't
Okay.
really know what the deal is with the shadow demons.
Yeah.
quite
This
Okay.
is
yet.
the first time that somebody acknowledges, hey, they kind of look like the Monitor.
Okay, because
Yeah.
I assumed when they appeared in the Monitor's place, they were attacking that they were the Monitor, but then he kind of gets rid of them by turning on the lights.
Yeah, I
and-
think everyone assumes it, but nobody has yet said anything because they're still in the should we or shouldn't we stage.
Their deal will be explained more later, just
Cool.
not
All right.
in this issue.
This is
But
where we get kind of
stay tuned.
established that these tuning forks exist and that different bands of heroes are being sent out to protect them.
And they're all
just
in,
accept the shadows as the putties of this universe.
and they are all the tuning forks are in different areas and different Earths,
Time periods and
so
what have you. Yeah.
they're certain critical areas.
And we also find out what's going on with the whole Luther Lois baby.
I was
from
excited
Earth
about
3.
this.
He's aging and looking weirder, I guess. So I'll be honest, I wasn't sure that there was star stuff going on in the shadows of the darkness in his coloration, because I really just thought it was imperfections of the book. You know, just little
Yeah,
ones.
the printing's not the best.
Yeah. So we are acknowledging that there are going to be callbacks. But so far, nothing has paid off. I guess second issue, we shouldn't, because we see another turning fork in Atlantis, in dry Atlantis. And we have an interesting, what to me feels like a really awkward start of a D&D campaign with our wizard friend and Psycho Pirate and Obsidian all making their way to town.
But they all have wonderful capes. I love that
do.
first
They're
panel
the
where
Cape
all,
Brigade.
all their capes are just swirling in the breeze.
They may
That's
have
how
picked
you
the
know
three-
it's Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah, they may have picked the three best capes to go on this adventure,
And then they're joined by the other cape.
Yeah.
that's right by Pariah, who shows up once again whining about how everything sucks, and then Psycho Pirate, who was expressly told not to use his powers for evil, uses his powers for evil, and tries to make Pariah happy, which is not a good look, and then eventually turns his gaze upon the citizens of Atlantis, which is even worse look. Obsidian uses his very weird power to protect everyone, and we are defaulted out into the universe. It was a rush of stuff that happened that effectively this leads to the one named villain who we really had any kind of vested interest in from the beginning being yanked off the Monitor team and recruited by whoever the nemesis is, whoever this bad person is who's sending the shadows, who we do not know yet, but who
Nemesis bad guy.
who I strongly suspect I know his
Whoa,
name
whoa,
anyways.
whoa, whoa, whoa. This isn't Transformers. We can't name anybody quite that obviously.
So yeah, it's an interesting series of events, but not really. I don't know if this would have excited me as a young reader. I think at this point I would have been like, oh, all right, well, I guess the bad guy immediately betrayed people at the lowest stakes game ever and then gets recruited for the bad guy team. All right. Thanks for that. And we get more ominous foreshadowing that Harbinger is going to betray the Monitor. I think that's pretty much the recap of the entire book. But what do we think of it?
There's that call out to Raven.
Yeah.
That was interesting.
Yeah.
I missed that.
Something
What
I
is that?
recognize.
Yeah, just the one panel where this is where Harbinger is just like, Monitor, why did we bother recruiting the Psycho Pirate to begin with? Because he's
is not great.
Immediately betrayed us.
He's horrible and he's unstable and he's insane. Maybe he wasn't the best
betrayed us.
choice. And then the Monitor says what does he say?
like
The
Raven
menace
was
we deal
unavailable or
with is
something?
one of emotion, which the menace that we've
Seems
been
like it's
introduced
about
to
antimatter,
is
yeah.
antimatter destroying universes. That is not really emotional.
I mean,
And there's Raven on the
Yeah,
on the
she
screen.
goes. She goes. Wouldn't Raven have been a better choice? And
Yeah.
then we kind of leave it.
and
okay,
he's
yeah.
like, lots of things are going on with Raven right now. We kind of, which again goes back to what we said in the first episode. Teen Titans was a hit book.
Yeah.
It
So
was,
Look,
yeah.
look, George is sick of drawing her.
This is basically Marv Wolfman saying Raven is tied up in a storyline in the new Teen Titans right now, so she
read
is
that.
not available yet.
Like, we didn't forget about her.
Yeah.
Just freaking go with it.
Please stop writing
And
us
also,
letters.
the Titans continuity was really complex at this time because DC had introduced this thing called the hardcover softcover plan. Do you guys know about this?
No, I don't.
No.
Okay, well, this was we talked about how the comics marketplace that was kind of still split between the newsstand and the specialty shops.
Right.
So we had the standard New Teen Titans book that was available on the newsstand and in specialty shops. DC decided to introduce a line of books that was just exclusively for comic shops. And so to do this, they chose their most popular books at the time. They started out with New Teen Titans and Legion of Superheroes. And they had these deluxe books on nicer paper with whiter paper and better colors
Right.
and all that. And these books were basically skipping a year ahead in continuity.
Oh, wow.
And the plan was you do a year of this book and then it's reprinted in the newsstand book. So for 1 year, Marv Wolfman was writing the Titans in two time eras.
Oh,
Wow.
So he was like setting up a lot of stuff in the newsstand
He knew
book
he had to
that would
make
pay off
later. That
in
must
the
have been
deluxe
really
book.
hard to do.
And he's also doing Crisis at the same time. So Marv Wolfman, his plate is very full at this time.
Yeah, I mean, that
So-
must be incredibly, like, fulfilling in terms of payoff, knowing that what you're building is going to link up to something eventually. Fingers crossed that you're still doing it.
Yeah.
But also exhausting.
Yeah.
the phrase "poor bastard" keeps going through my head.
He a little after he wrapped up Crisis and the whole hardcover, softcover Titans thing, he went into some writer's block for a while, and he was
I don't think you
he
could
had a
call that,
lot of trouble.
Yeah, I don't think it's fair to call that writer's block when
Empty
when-
well syndrome
he
or
was-
something.
Yeah, when
Yeah.
you've been producing twice as much as any human.
Well,
might.
he got very burned out, and he's upfront about this. I
Yeah.
mean, he's like, my books kind of went off the rails after this.
So I know that James and Pete were kind of, well, especially Pete, you were a little off on that first book. Is this a little bit more approachable for you? Are you getting more into it, or what?
It's a little bit better, but again, still, if we weren't going on, like if we weren't still doing this show, I probably wouldn't pick up the next book.
Yeah.
This is very difficult for me to get through.
I'm definitely interested in that stuff with Flash, Batman and Superman. I like the angle with the Luthor kid. But otherwise, the stuff with these guys I don't know anything about, and I don't have any reason to care about them.
Right.
Except now I have an investment in what's his name, Future Boy.
Commandy.
But only because you mentioned him a bajillion times in this episode. Wasn't actually when I was reading
Well,
this at
Marv
all
wrote this
invested.
for the
It's a
podcast.
Jack Kirby character. You got to show the respect.
Oh man, he was up on the bulletin board in the studio up until recently. He may still be there.
But yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of time spent with a lot of these characters that I have no connection to.
Sure.
And again, when you say like a lot of them, we didn't have even some of the ones that I was excited to see more of, we don't see in this book. Like I didn't see other than standing in the big the big double pager, no Blue Beetle, no anything like that.
And at the same time that DC was doing Crisis, they did a book called Who's Who, which was basically their version of like the official handbook of the Marvel Universe, which was they were going through all their characters in alphabetical order and introducing. And you'd have like a nice hero shot of them, and then an entry that summarized their history, and that was coming out in conjunction with Crisis. So you kind of could get up to speed on these characters. Like by Anthro appeared in Crisis 2, he was in Who's Who #1. He was one of the very first entries
Because he started with an A.
Yeah.
As somebody who recently tried to watch some of the CW shows last crossover event, which was Crisis on Earth
Elseworlds,
X?
I think.
Or Elseworlds. It was
Yeah.
Elseworlds. But had been kind of off the wagon for some of these shows for a while. Like, for example, seeing Brainiac there, I was like, oh, I guess they introduced Brainiac at some point in Supergirl. So I think there's an element of that in the reading of this where you're like, if you haven't watched it all or read it all, a lot of times this is just like, so they did this. And I can only imagine that Crisis on the CW is going to be very similar, where a lot of people who are watching this are going to be like, and who is that again? Oh, he was in the 90s Flash. Oh, okay. Who is that again? Oh, he was on Smallville. And a lot of people are just not going to get it.
I think I'm going to have that effect when I'm watching the CW Crisis, because the only show I was watching on a regular basis last year was The Flash, and I just kind of got sick of The Flash show, so I'm not watching any of those shows regularly. I'll be watching the crossover, but I'm sure I'll be like, oh, so that's what's happening with Barry and Iris right now.
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting.
I have an issue with the volume of shows on those episodes on those shows. It's very hard to watch it, but we're not going to be
it's like
covering
5 shows. It's a lot to keep up with.
23 episodes. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But hey, lots of stuff to watch when the world collapses and you buy those DVDs to watch them on your power generator. For me, this is my first read through as well, and there's 2 different ways I'm looking at it. I'm trying to look at it as what I would like at the time, and I think I'd find it a little hard to pick up, and I'd be very frustrated that Batman and Superman weren't doing more things, admittedly. But as a historical artifact, I'm loving this, because I'm looking at this and I'm like, oh my God, this is where so many other things have started. This is the origin of so much that I kind of knew from osmosis, but never read. So I'm excited about it.
I think you just have to keep in mind it's issue 2 of a 12-issue story, and we're still basically setting stuff up.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, not all the pieces are in place yet. And I think by 3 or 4, we'll see, and certainly by 5, we will see some more triggers be pulled.
But I'm already ready for the denouement.
So, just so I'm following.
Yeah.
This shadow thing is the bad thing? Maybe?
Yes, probably.
Yeah.
Probably,
It
but
certainly
it does,
seems not to be a good thing.
it does save the guy's, Atlantis wizard guy, and doesn't it
I
save
think it
him?
less
no,
saves
that was
the more
that was
recruits.
Obsidian.
Yeah.
That was Obsidian?
It's a little
Yeah.
confusing
The
because
problem is-
Obsidian has
Okay.
shadow powers.
Obsidian
and
looks like
he doesn't look that
Cool.
different from the shadow creatures
he
that are
didn't look that
menacing
different.
them.
Thank
Yeah.
you. That's
There you go.
cleared that up for me. Okay, all right. I'm on board again.
And
Excellent.
and I don't know if that was like an intentional choice on Marv Wolfman's part, where he was just like, oh, well, I'll draw a parallel between them. But maybe he could have picked another Infinitor to put in there. Maybe
Well,
it
then-
was just confusing having a
But then
hero.
that makes sense. So
Yeah.
the Monitor's supposedly trying to be the good guy here, and this shadow thing that's taken over Harbinger and Harbinger. Man, that sounds like a good guy name now that I think about it. And she's slowly like sucking away his powers as she's getting stronger. And yeah,
It's not
okay.
that she's sucking away his powers.
Well,
it's-
the shadow thing.
The more
Yeah.
antimatter destroys worlds, the less power the Monitor has, apparently.
Yeah.
The antimatter
and she's
thing going
compromised, and
against the
she's going to kill the Monitor at some
Yeah.
point.
There are 2 major players in this, and they're sort of compelling. That's basically what I'm about to say.
You mean Harbinger and the Monitor? Or?
I would say Monitor and whoever's against him.
Okay, whoever the unknown bad guy
Yes.
is.
Yeah, I'm with you, Frank. I am kind of interested in that story, whatever that
the
thing's going
Monitor
on.
and whoever's anti him.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and the little tidbits we got of the Luther baby, like that stuff is interesting. But I guess it's also interesting because I kind of know it's all new, as compared to like the stuff in here that I feel like I'm supposed to know
Oh,
something
Luther
about.
Baby was in like 40 issues of a comic back in
Well,
the 40s.
it doesn't
Oh,
matter.
yeah. Luther, baby.
Babies. All right, we're done. Hey!
The original inspiration for Watchmen babies.
Yes. Hey, thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode of Near Mint, please like, follow, and subscribe so you can get the latest in the podcatcher of your choice. Oh, and leave us a good review so more people find out about the show. It really does help a lot. See you next time.
This has been a non-productive media presentation. Executive producer Frank Hablawi. This program and many others like it on the Non-Productive Network is distributed under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives license. Please share it, but ask before trying to change it or sell it. For more information, visit non-productive.com.